Welcome to fresponse.com. Today we're going to talk about fresponse Consultant plus Covert and Enterprise Edition and how we would use fresponse to make images collect agentless data from remote shares as well as cloud storage information. We're going to start by showing you both the fresponse management console as well as the license manager. The license manager brokers access to our license dongle. It binds to a local port and has controls based on a username and password value that you designate. Essentially, remote subjects will reach out to this license manager when you attempt to authenticate to them. Here you can see the TCP port and fresponse username and password that you've designated to control access to the remote machine. Pressing OK will collapse the entire display into the system tray such that it will be out of our way. The back-end service will continue to run. So now that we've done that, we can show you here in the system tray where it's running. We'll focus our rest of our attention on the fresponse management console. It's cut into 4 sections. Across the top we have data sources, items, and activities. Along the bottom we have messages. The fresponse management console's data sources shows us the ability to connect to different remote subjects, Windows, Linux, etc. Agentless connections, which would be things like SMB and SFTP shares, as well as cloud storage, Amazon, Office 365, Google Workspaces, etc. Items would be an instance of a given data source, and activity would be things we're currently doing. The Messages tab below will populate with text as we go through these steps. First, let's talk about getting fresponse on a remote machine. Since we're talking in terms of Consultant plus Covert or Enterprise, we have here a service style deployment. So we have a service name, description, executable, and port, and of course the location for that license manager for when the subject starts. Those top 4 values are malleable. You can make them something innocuous in your environment. You just can't give them the name of an existing system service or system executable. Let's go through the deployment process now. We can either deploy the subject directly using this console and credentials, or export a Microsoft software installer to deploy separately. We're going to focus on deploying the software via the network today using our console. The first thing we'll want to do is configure credentials. The credential configuration process is cut into both a Windows and a non-Windows system setup. We'll go ahead and put in a user account, domain, and password on our test network that we would like to use for deployment. Alternatively, we could run as our currently logged in user and use that account or credential to deploy the software. This may be helpful in the instance that you have credential or keyed access, some sort of third-party token for your user account. If we were deploying to a non-Windows system, we could put in a user account and assume root privileges using su or sudo, or a root account directly. Deployment to non-Windows systems is done with SSH and SFTP. Deployment for Windows systems is done with SMB. Let's go ahead and continue by putting in a host name that we want to deploy the fresponse software to, and then press install and start. And that's going to do exactly like it sounds. It's going to authenticate to the remote machine, copy an executable, register that executable as a service, and start the service. Here we can see that operation was successful. We'll go ahead and press OK. And we can tell from on the remote machine we have one subject. That one subject is a Windows subject, and we can see it in the items panel. We have a couple of options here. We can create images or attach targets. Let's start by attaching a subject target. We've got a list of available devices. Since it is a Windows machine, we do have physical memory as well as volumes C and E, disks 0 and 1. We'll go ahead and select disk 1 and attach that drive. In the activity panel, you'll see momentarily a new process spin up. That process will attach to the drive and map it into our machine as a new physical disk. In this case, it becomes physical drive 1. This newly attached physical drive will be assigned volume letters by the operating system, but it is completely read-only. We have a couple of options when it comes to creating images using fresponse. We can right-click on the disk itself and create an image, or we can create an image over the network by communicating with the subject directly. The pros and cons to each are outlined in our manual, and you are encouraged to take a look at that prior to making your decision. Image, in this instance, will image the subject target directly. I can scroll down here and select a physical drive. In this case, I'll select drive 1, and I'll also cleverly name that image disk 1. We've set aside a collection directory on our local machine here, and we'll go ahead and use that collection directory to copy our data to. Fresponse images are E01 or expert witness format, so we're going to go ahead and fill in the header information of that E01 file with some test data so that we can kick off the image. Just like before, a running image will appear under Activities and will contain some periodic performance update information as it runs. While that image and disk attachment operation is running, let's go ahead and focus our attention on the rest of the console. We have both agentless connections and cloud storage. Agentless connections are just that. They are the ability to collect individual file and folder content from remote shares, both SMB and SFTP. We've got an SFTP account and credential configured here. We can double click on it and actually drill into a specific directory. In this case, I'll go down and select an mshannon directory on this test machine. That will be the root location that we'll pull data from. We could set a file name filter if we wanted to, and alternatively only collect the contents of that directory or all the directories underneath it. We can save the data either to our local directory or a VHD. For the sake of expediency, we'll select local directory and go ahead and put this in the same collection folder where we've been saving our EO1 image. We'll go ahead and press collect, and then we'll have a new activity spin up and begin connecting to that subject and enumerating content and copying out items. While that's running, we'll take a look briefly at cloud storage. We do have an Amazon account configured. We'll go ahead and use that Amazon account today to create a collection. Double clicking on that item will give us a list of the available buckets within that Amazon account. We've gone ahead and select the S3 standard bucket in the US East 1 region. We could collect again its contents either to a VHD or a local directory. And in addition, just like before, we could drill through that path to locate a subfolder to collect to. We're going to go ahead and collect the entire contents of the bucket, and we'll pull that data down and set it in the collection folder. So here you'll see we have 4 different collections running at the same time, or 4 different operations rather, running at the same time. We have our disk 1 image, which is completed. We have an SFTP collection that has also completed, and now an S3 bucket collection. Collecting data from S3 will pull down, and really all cloud providers will pull down individual file and folder content, and then as it does, individual files will be reset, their dates and times, based on the dates and times offered by the provider. In the case of Amazon, the only date and time that's currently offered or available is the last modified time, so that means both the accessed and created times will be zeroed out. Specific details on what times are available and where they come from are available in mission guides specific to each provider on our website. So when in doubt, we highly recommend you check there before sending an email. Most of the time, your questions will be answered in each one of those documents specific to the individual provider. Once the collection finishes, you'll see we have completed operations and all the data stored in that directory. We can remove these individual items from the display. It's a simple right click and remove to take each individual item off the display and remove it from the back-end system. We'll go ahead and open up the collection folder so you can see the individual disk 1 image as well as log files and collected data from both Amazon and SFTP. We'll go ahead and delete those now so they don't run and collide with a future presentation. Removing F-Response disk, removing an attached disk is a simple right click and detach drive. And then removing F-Response from the remote machine is just as easy with a simple select, right click, and stop and remove subject software. That's going to take the remote machine back to the way it was before we started and take us through the entire F-Response process from start to finish. If you have any questions, we're available on the web at www.f-response.com, or you can send us an email at support@f-response.com or sales@f-response.com. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.